Ukraine has a $750 billion plan to rebuild itself, including integrating itself with the EU, strengthening its infrastructure, and supporting its population. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, marking the largest European conflict since World War II. Over a year and a half later, and combat is still raging on. Despite progress made during Ukraine's 2022 Kharkiv counteroffensive and the ongoing 2023 counteroffensive, the war is advancing slowly and the future is uncertain. Whether the Russian effort collapses completely or the war ends in a settlement with a divided Ukraine, no one knows for sure. However, one thing stands for certain. Ukraine is seriously damaged and will need to rebuild. The importance of this recovery is massive. If Ukraine wins but is left with widespread destruction and a stagnant economy, this will be no win at all and can embolden Russia to again commit acts of aggression. However, if Ukraine can rebuild and revitalize, this will deter Russia from launching a future invasion. Because of this importance, Ukraine's rebuilding effort has not been overlooked. On July 4th and 5th, 2022, Switzerland and Ukraine held the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Lugano, Switzerland, during which Ukraine presented a 10-year, $750 billion recovery plan. And in March 2023, the World Bank released its own report, estimating Ukraine's reconstruction costs at $411 billion over 10 years. These massive costs have given way to strategic planning and business opportunity in what the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce has labeled the world's largest construction site. The first part of the 2022 Ukraine Recovery Plan is a list of prerequisites, including de-oligarzation, anti-corruption measures, and providing physical, military, and cyber protection, which will allow for a smooth rebuilding process. Once these are fulfilled, Ukraine will work to re-establish a clean and safe environment. To do this, it will begin clearing landmines from the country, which is now the most heavily mined in the world, with roughly 30% of its territory potentially contaminated. In addition, it will clean up the Radikal plant in Kyiv, which is polluting the surrounding environment with mercury, as well as restore the Solodvino salt mines, which have been flooded and now threaten to contaminate the Danube with saltwater, causing a major ecological disaster. Moreover, Ukraine plans on taking fire safety measures and modernizing radiological monitoring in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, as well as constructing new forest roads, establishing new national parks, restoring wildlife, and increasing forest cover to 20% of the country's area. Alongside cleaning up the environment, Ukraine will begin rebuilding and strengthening its transport infrastructure. 293 kilometers of railway track, 95 railway turnouts, 27,200 kilometers of roads, and 3,000 bridges will be reconstructed, constructed, or modernized. In addition, to secure supply lines and strengthen its bond with the EU, Ukraine will build 200 kilometers of new standard gauge and 330 kilometers of new Russian gauge rail to the EU border in Danube, which will include cross-border agricultural storage warehouses and gauge transfer equipment. The existing 12 EU road border points will also be modernized, and 3 more will be added. Existing airports will also be reconstructed, and along the Danube, Ukraine will expand its ports. Lastly, in the long term, a new high-speed railway will be constructed between Kyiv and Warsaw. Along with strengthening its transport infrastructure, Ukraine will evolve its energy network. Throughout the war, Russian attacks have destroyed important energy infrastructure, such as the Kremenchuk oil refinery, as well as numerous power plants, including those in Chernihiv and Okhtyrka, reducing Ukraine's power capacity by 61%. After the war, Ukraine plans to re-establish this capacity, as well as build 5 to 10 gigawatts of new renewable energy sources, 3.5 gigawatts of hydroelectric power, and to increase its nuclear capacity, including 2 gigawatts of new blocks at Khmelnytsky nuclear power plant. It also plans to save up a 30-plus day emergency oil stock, increase gas production at existing fields, modernize its gas distribution network, and expand its connection with the EU's electricity grid. Lastly, Ukraine plans to develop a hydrogen economy, including 15 gigawatts of electrolyzers, 30 gigawatts of renewable energy for hydrogen production, and hydrogen transport infrastructure. In addition to building infrastructure, Ukraine plans to decrease business regulation and lower taxes, which it hopes will incentivize new business creation, attract investment, and encourage cross-border labor movement, helping kickstart economic growth, specifically in agriculture. As part of its recovery, Ukraine plans to recultivate damaged land, build a 1 mega-hectare irrigation system, and increase vegetable, fruit, berry, meat, and milk production. In addition, it hopes to boost manufacturing of automotive components and agricultural machinery, modernize its iron ore mining and steel manufacturing, as well as develop a thriving startup ecosystem for R&D and IT companies. But just as important as all this, Ukraine must re-attract its more than 6 million refugees while supporting and lifting up its people. After the war, it plans to rebuild housing with more energy-efficient designs, modernize district heating, and upgrade water and waste management systems. It also plans to set up short-term mobile education facilities, establish flagship regional schools, invest in research and development, and create science parks. To increase the well-being of its citizens, Ukraine also plans to launch a post-war mental health program, along with rehabilitation services and overall improvements to its healthcare system. Maybe most importantly though, it hopes to unite its people together with culture by supporting local, regional, and national media, the arts and sciences, developing sport infrastructure, promoting youth sports, and restoring cultural heritage and a national identity. While supporting the Ukrainian people's mental health is very important, they are not the only ones who need support. In fact, almost everyone, including me, needs mental health support at times. That's why I've partnered with today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. However, BetterHelp also knows that sometimes starting therapy can be hard. That's why with BetterHelp, you can schedule therapy sessions without any face-to-face interaction, via phone call, video chat, or even messaging, at a time that is convenient for you. And if your first therapist isn't a match, no worries. BetterHelp has over 30,000 therapists in their network, so you're bound to find the right match. Your mental health is incredibly important, so it's worth giving it some time and attention. And even if you're currently in a good spot mentally, there's always room to improve and grow. To join the over 4 million people who have used BetterHelp to live a happier, healthier life, click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/futurology to get 10% off your first month. Thank you, BetterHelp, and now back to the video. Ukraine has a list of rebuilding goals it hopes to achieve by 2032. First of all, it hopes to attract investment of over $750 billion and to reach 7% annual GDP growth rate. In addition, it hopes to produce 65% less CO2 emissions compared to 1990. As for education, it hopes to improve its average secondary education PISA math score from 453 to 520, and to have 20 universities in the QS Top 1000 World University rankings. Lastly, Ukraine wants to strengthen its Western alliances. Throughout the course of the war, the EU has been an instrumental source of support for Ukraine, and it promises to continue doing so after the war by providing billions of dollars in aid and investment. This support will only increase unity, helping lead to the eventual accession of Ukraine into the EU. 4 days after Russia invaded, Ukraine applied for EU membership, requesting immediate admission under a new special procedure. While rejected, it was granted status as a candidate for EU accession. As part of this, it was given a list of reforms to implement, including improving its legal system, fighting corruption and money laundering, removing oligarchy influence, and protecting minorities. Already, Ukraine is hard at work to implement these reforms, and after the war, it will only have more capacity to do so. If Ukraine can successfully align itself with EU standards, the Union will very likely open its doors in the upcoming years. After all, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the EU Commission, declared, "The future of Ukraine is in our Union." Along with strengthening EU relations, Ukraine has increased its ties with NATO and is now pushing to join the alliance. While NATO is hesitant to invite Ukraine in during wartime for fear that Russia will retaliate, when the war comes to a close, it will very likely accept Ukraine into the alliance. With both EU and NATO membership, a future Ukraine would be significantly more protected from a Russian invasion. This, combined with a clean environment, improved infrastructure, and economic growth, would help lead to a safe and prosperous future. However, reaching this goal comes with some significant challenges. Whether the global community can help Ukraine overcome them to achieve a bright future, we will just have to wait and see. If you enjoyed this video, it would be amazing if you like and subscribe to Futurology for more videos very similar to this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.